Today we have what I think is an important lecture. I asked Lydia Hill, who grew up in this parish, to come and talk to us a little bit about ecology and the church. I had a chance to look at Lydia's slides. I don't know everything she's going to say, so it could be very exciting, but I think it's going to be very good. And we'll have a conversation afterwards. What I think is important for us to understand is that the church is in charge of what the Lord created and gave to mankind. And we have to keep that in mind as we try to avoid the extremes of something that's gotten really politicized, which is unfortunate because we got to take care of this garden. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Lydia, and hopefully I didn't steal any of her fire. I don't think I did. And let's welcome her.
A little bit louder.
I will, but if you keep everyone quiet at that table, you'll be able to hear it.
Hello. I'd just like to give myself a little bit of a warm-up. I was a student at Eastern Michigan University studying environmental science. I've always been very passionate about it. I think it's one of the most important things that we have, and it's an everyday part of our life. It makes up most of what we survive off of, not everything, so it's very important to take care of. I'm going to discuss the impacts that our lifestyles have on the earth and some things that you can do about it, and showing some biblical examples of God's word telling us we need to take care of the earth. So a couple quotes from Leviticus. "The land must not be sold permanently, because the land is mine, and you are but aliens and my tenants. Throughout the country that you hold as a possession, you must provide for the redemption of the land." There is an acknowledgement of the cyclical and systematic players within a world that can't be treated as much of an object as it is. It needs to be understood as a living thing, as a changing thing, and must not be sold permanently. So, pretty interesting there. "The nations were angry, and your wrath has come, the time for judging the dead, and for rewarding your servants, the prophets and your saints, and those who reverence your name, both small and great, and for destroying those who destroy the earth." There's actually a lot of examples of the end of the world having a lot to do with the environmental crisis. Again, Jeremiah, a lot of prophecies. "I brought you into a fertile land to eat its fruit and rich produce, but you came and defiled my land and made my inheritance detestable." Luke, "But when you hear of wars and commotions, do not be terrified, for these things must come to pass first, but the end will not come immediately." Ecological change is a very long-term effect. It takes a while to pass. So you'll hear of the wars and commotions, and the end will not come immediately. It will still take time. "Now, when these things begin to happen, look up and lift your heads, because your redemption draws near. For it will come as a snare on all those who dwell on the face of the whole earth. For indeed the days are coming in which they will say, 'Blessed are the barren, wombs that never bore, and breasts which never nursed.' They will begin to say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if they do these things in the green wood, what will be done in the dry?" This whole situation is very sad. It's very upsetting to everything that is living on it, which is everything that we know. This is a huge problem. This has drastic implications in life, in salvation, in all the things that we hold close. So it's an important thing. We are made in God's likeness and must rule over the rest of creation. All right, we can't all be God, so we might as well take care of what He gave us. And we are responsible for taking care of the garden. He again acknowledges the interconnected system because when he says he will destroy mankind, the narrative leans towards acknowledging all creation, not just mankind. We are meant to cope within nature, not subjugate it. And I'm just going to show you this really interesting page that Father Gregory was telling me about. It's about the Russian Orthodox diocese and their opinion on the environmental crisis. Deeply concerned for the problems generated by the contemporary civilization. Ecological problems occupy a considerable place among them. Relations between man and nature were broken in prehistoric times because of the fall of man and his alienation from God. The ecological crisis compels us to review our relations with the environment. The Orthodox Church appreciates the efforts for overcoming the ecological crisis and calls people to intensive cooperation in actions aimed to protect God's creation. This is a big one. I think that we have become a little bit too geared towards independence and addiction, phones, work, whatever it may be, and should utilize the gift of democracy to become more self-sufficient and economically resilient and do some of these infrastructural changes ourselves. We can wait on the government all day, but we've been waiting on the government our entire history, and not really too much has come out of that. The ecological problems are essentially anthropological, as they are generated by man, not nature. Now, this one is a heated issue for some reason, but I'll go through the science as well and show you how it's not just all propaganda. It is impossible to overcome the ecological crisis in the situation of a spiritual crisis. So again, it has spiritual implications. This is something that we need to take care of, something that we need to pay attention to, and we're not. So this is the carbon cycle. Carbon is an atom that exists within our Earth. It has a very long and complicated life cycle. There are macrocosmic and microcosmic implications, which has led to an increase in atmospheric carbon that was stored in the dead remains of prehistoric animals. So they're all in the ground. Animals, plants store carbon in their cells, and once they are trapped within the earth, they are compressed and they become super full of carbon-containing molecules. And when it's burned, it's released into the environment. With deforestation, you don't have enough trees to suck it back and turn it into oxygen. It heats the planet by trapping it. It has good ability, like methane. Well, methane is better, but carbon dioxide traps the heat on the surface, so it doesn't go back out into space. So the Earth is getting warmer. We dig up more fossil fuels, and it enters the atmosphere again, traps more heat, and then doesn't go anywhere. This is a huge problem. I'm sure you've heard about it. Everyone is talking about it. It's not a political issue, like Father Gregory said. This is purely scale and relationship. There's no outside mass coming in. There's no, secret disappearing of these compounds. They just exist. The atmosphere also has loads of pollutants. couple stats. Air pollution causes 7 million deaths per year. So this isn't a small issue that we're talking about. It comes in as asthma, pneumonia, cancers, and water pollution kills more people per year than war and violence do. And yet I'm not hearing anything about that. There are lots of different kinds of pollutions. And coexists within life at the same time to build up in macrocosmic systems like predators and then spread even more harmfully and don't really have too much of an outside route to exit. The water we use is also polluted by agricultural mass overtreatment of land, pharmaceutical leakage, manufacturing pollution, plastic, and lots more. We are lucky in America to have treated wastewater. So please use your privilege to help the world and donate charity to places that build infrastructure, permanent and informative solutions to the inequalities that global economy has caused. This global economy, full of inequality again and injustice. I'll just give you a rundown of some of the water treatment stuff that it takes to get us to drink water, something that is supposed to be just there for us. So there are a couple things that wastewater has. Pollution from fertilizers, pesticides, pollution from medical waste, medications being flushed down toilets. Let's see. Fossil fuels can sometimes enter wastewater, enter the water system. There are also, like, there's a plume underneath Ann Arbor of some biogas, some kind of hazardous liquid. One or the other, yeah, something like that. And it's very dangerous and could enter our water system fairly soon. The only water source that is completely removed from pollutants is something that is covered in rock that is impermeable. So this is a pool of water underground that nothing can get into, and you can only drill through it. And once you use it, it's gone. So really, we are combining all the world's water together more and more, and also adding more pollutants to it. So the rate that we encounter pollutants in our bodies goes up.
You can describe it maybe to people.
All right. I was going to show a video about some sustainable housing. It's important now that we have about 40 years before this all hits the fan to start thinking about investing properly, saving money for solar panels, gardening, things like this that will help your family become independent. Because at the rate that this country is going, with so many essentially slaves working for us to support our GDP and our massive income gap, you really need to work on getting away from that in the next 20 years. It was basically a house made out of recycled materials. Looks beautiful. Huge windows, a garden inside for wastewater treatment. It was in the desert. It was very beautiful. I'm sorry I couldn't show it. Right. Another thing we have to talk about: habitat destruction, deforestation, agricultural homogeny, waste generation, and overpopulation. These are all things that we're facing other than just climate change and heat increase. The Earth is essentially an interconnected system of life forms that work with each other in symbiosis to increase the material yield of the ecosystem. They can exist in perfect harmony and recycle, like the Garden of Eden. As they get torn down, we lose some species of animals and the natural ability for that area of forest to capture carbon. There are quite a few species of animals that I have found very interesting. There is one called a mouth-rooting toad, and they actually swallow their babies, have them inside their stomach, and then spit them out later. This was looked at to be a cure, to have some kind of cure for ulcers, stomach ulcers, and the frog went extinct. So this isn't devoid of consequences, habitat loss and loss of biodiversity. So another big problem is what these forests are replanted with. Monoculture is the use of one species of crop for a large amount of land. They're quite frequently planted with one species that can be very harmed by some kind of pest. They also support companies that use money pretty irresponsibly, really are in it for taking over the world, making as many seeds that get popular and give them the most money, the most profit, like Monsanto. These guys are pretty nasty. They don't have the natural ability to produce more. It's a very dead ecosystem. There's not a lot of waste management. It doesn't get recycled. It doesn't get renewed. And eventually the soil loses all of its nutrients. It doesn't have anything holding it. It constantly gets tilled, so you lose the topsoil, and then it all blows away. It's a huge problem. Monoculture is a huge problem. There are a couple solutions. You can plant things together. You can do drip irrigation. There are plenty, and no one is really doing anything about it. And I had another video.
We had to change to a new computer right at the last minute, so it's not Lydia's fault. It's a technical issue.
All right. Here are a couple things that you can do to help. Most raw materials come from Africa, where workers are severely underpaid. The consuming of processed materials makes it impossible for the consumer to have a say where the materials come from and are handled. Be aware of this and limit your spending in these sectors: electronics, processed food, appliances, and vehicles. really, this is, we as Americans talk with our wallets, and if we can't have a safe place for NATO, if we can't discuss things civilly, then we have to, we can barely even handle democracy, and here we are spending money in these places that literally kill us. So, something that you guys are all very familiar with. We all fast. It's really trying to get the stereotypical American consumer to step away from these things. A couple more things. The U.S. produced 3 times the average amount of waste. I'm not sure what year that's from, but they're always number 1 in the per capita waste and energy use, food waste, things like that. Really bad. 82.8% of land in China is contaminated. They manufacture a lot. Pollutants are everywhere. China's air health is really bad. Only a third of cigarette butts end up in the trash. The BP Deepwater Horizon oil spill dumped 205.8 tons of oil into the Gulf of Mexico. There will be more plastic than fish in the ocean by 2050. Antibiotics from the meat industry lead to antibiotic resistance. Nylon and polyester contribute particles of broken down material during washing that ends up in the water system. So you can also stop wearing clothes, stop buying, not stop wearing clothes. Please don't.
I think that's going to be a great clip when I clip that.
There are a lot of clothes that are better for the environment, like wool. We live in Michigan. You can just wear wool, and no one will be upset.
Wool underwear?
Wool underwear, yeah.
Oh, like in the olden days.
Mm-hmm.
I remember those.
Also, buying too many clothes. Clothes waste, it's a huge problem. Donate your clothes when you're done with them. Buy from Salvation Army, Goodwill, whatever it is. Try to really be aware of what you buy, what you need to buy, what you don't. And especially now, it's just going to get worse. It's really about saving your money and putting it back into your house, or starting a commune, or I don't know, building a dorm here, whatever it is. It's 20 years, and everything will be different. An eighth of all species are on the brink of extinction. There are over 100,000 chemicals used in everyday products, some not safe at all. Approximately 85 million child laborers work in toxic environments. So that's not even the full amount of child laborers. That's just how many work in toxic environments. And pollution kills approximately 8.3 million people annually. Here are some things you can do. You can go to regulations.gov. You can send a little clip, a little bit of text telling them how you feel. You can eat less meat. Again, we know all of this stuff. We're good at that, right? Commute smart. You can buy a Tesla. You can ride the bus. You can ride a bike. Reduce the use of single-use plastics. Now, this is one of the hardest things that I think anyone in America can struggle with. Finding ways to buy things that doesn't have a bunch of packaging. Now, there's this store on Stadium. It has a bunch of dry goods like grains. Dad, do you know what store I'm talking about?
I do.
By the pound?
Yeah, by the pound. That's what it is. Yeah, it's great.
They have a bunch of.
It's on industrial.
Industrial. All right. Yeah.
Oh,
You bring your jar. You
Yeah.
bring your own jar.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
so they sell like grains like quinoa.
Mm-hmm.
Wheat, whatever.
They have lots of flour,
Bring your own container.
spices.
Use environmentally friendly cleaning products. Buy energy efficient appliances and turn off lights when you're not using them. Buy locally grown food. Use detergent pods or strips instead of liquid. I've seen these really cool strips. They don't have any packaging. You just put a strip in and it does your laundry. Recycle and compost.
Does it fold it? Because if it folds it, I'll buy it.
Okay, yeah. Invest in green companies. Install clean energy solutions. There are quite a few things. Again, I mean, I've read books about people building these electricity and wastewater management systems themselves. This isn't something that you can't do. It's not something that we can't all do together. You know, maybe that's an even more important thing that the church can do is kind of stand up for this, because I don't really see a lot of action around it. Here's some stocks to invest in if you want to write them down. UGE International does solar projects and works with Biden, so it's a pretty big company. Beyond Meat, I'm sure you've all heard of it. Emiris, synthetic biochemical producer. Biotechnology is the future. Eventually we'll have to start using processes of living creatures to understand the scope of technology, and it's pretty cool. Yes?
Eat bugs.
Yeah, eat bugs, that's a good one.
Oh,
No?
no.
No.
I was offered a fried cricket a few months ago, and just when I saw the jar, I was gagging.
Yeah.
But I made myself try because my friends, oh, you have to try everything in life. I'm not sure. I ate it and I swallowed it, but I'm done.
You
She
did
did
your,
her part.
you did your part. Yes.
I tried something new, but bugs, no.
Yeah, beef is really bad. Beef is the worst thing you can eat. It has the least amount of calories per calorie taken to produce that calorie. Cows produce methane, which rips away the ozone layer, which keeps out harmful sun radiation.
You want me to have this tackler removed?
Yes, please. It's a very serious situation. We don't have the infrastructure to deal with it at this point. I don't think any country really does. Maybe Japan.
That's a lot of food for thought.
Yeah. Orsted, this is a good one. This one's gonna get big, I think, if you really wanna put your money somewhere. And in the next 10, 20 years, it should be real nice. Capstone Green Energy Corporation. This one's cool. They do energy solutions that help you reduce your carbon footprint. And they build microturbines that burn methane, one of the wastes that we're dealing with. Fuel Cell Energy Incorporated. This one's good, just energy production. And here I'm just going to remind you the things that you are supposed to do to help this situation. Spend your money to save money in the long run. It's really wise to think about getting a garden or some animals. But no cows, that's right. Start thinking about living another lifestyle. If you have a job that's 30 minutes away that you have to drive to, start thinking about how you're gonna, work from home, work locally, buy organic. Don't spray your lawn with chemicals, please. This is one of the worst things that we do. I understand the aesthetic of a perfectly manicured lawn, but if you could, please, this year, next year, whatever it may be, buy or contract a gardener who will make your lawn an ecosystem so that we can have better bugs, better pollinators. You know, pollinators are taking a population hit. They're not doing well. We don't have the bugs necessary to produce the food that we eat. This is essentially, this is the end of the world. This is the earth not working for us anymore. This is us not working with the earth. Dispose of things properly, that's also important, and use natural cleaning products. There's a lot of stuff that gets into the water and doesn't always have to be there. But that's it.
So, Dima, physics wanted to say something, but they had to leave. He was telling me quietly while Lydia was talking about Elder Cleopa in Romania, and that he's written a lot about the environment. I didn't know that, or I would have given you that information, but that may be something that people want to follow up on. I also want to stress that social concept of the Moscow Patriarchate, which Lydia mentioned. That's from the year 2000, right? That's like a different epoch already about thinking about environmental things, and already you saw that the church was looking forward. I mentioned to Father Colin he had to go also that Patriarch Kirill, when he was Metropolitan in Kaliningrad, gave a really good paper at an environmental gathering, a world environmental gathering, but for some reason he did it in Russian. I have no idea why. He speaks English fluently. So I haven't had a chance to translate the thing. If somebody's interested, you could help. It's not small, but it's really good and very interesting. But it's a lot of technical words that I don't really know very well, so it's kind of popping back and forth between the dictionary. Probably a native speaker would know that better. Okay, so questions for Lydia? Father Vladimir, I know you have something to share, so.
Well, it's mostly common. So with any great current thing that we wholeheartedly support, it's easily to fall into extremes in regard to environmentalism. One extreme is what Russian historian calls eco-fascism. So essentially the solution to environmental problem is to control human reproduction. Don't let them reproduce. And the other extreme is something I want to comment on, which is the idea that those environmental issues, they are kind of faked, and the assumption is materialistic, essentially that we treat Earth as kind of, material thing, which goes against the scriptures, and that's something that I want to read you about from Genesis chapter 4, and that came up in our discussions in the dogmatic theology class. And in chapter 4, there is a story in how Cain kills his brother Abel, and Cain, of course, is a farmer, more or less, a tiller of the ground. It's verse number 2. And then when Cain killed his brother Abel, Lord said unto Cain, it's verse 9, where is Abel thy brother? And he said, I know not, am I my brother's keeper? And he said, what hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood cried into me from the ground. So let's focus on the ground for earth. And then the next verse, and he said, and now art thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength, and fugitive and a vagabond shall thou be in the earth. So from this passage, it's clearly following that the conception, the concept of earth in the old scripture is not materialistic. It's kind of living creature. It's not like angels or other created things, but it's not completely materialistic. It's not just piece of dirt. So there is some life to that, because you see, something, and earth reacted to this murder of Abel. So it's just a quick comment that scripture is not supporting the materialistic concept of earth. So there is well, if you want to explore that, maybe other Cleopa wrote about it.
I think it's a really important point, and that's why I asked Father Vladimir to bring it up. It just, we don't worship the earth. We don't treat the earth as God, but to just treat it as a rock also doesn't make sense, right? So, and this point that is made in Genesis about how the earth resisted Cain now when he spilled his brother's blood on the earth, I think is a very important point for us as Orthodox Christians. As usual, we're trying to find that middle place where we're not thinking of something materially that God created as just pure material and nothing else, and in this case, in any case, and we're also not worshiping it. So we're trying to find that happy medium. So thank you, Father. Other comments? Let's get the talk and then the corner heckler here.
So, and to see how everything is just connected and have such a perfect balance, you can see only God in it. It's just, you understand that everything is creation of God, because, and we as with our sin, right, to want more, to have a better luxurious something, you know, that kind of gets us out of balance, and therefore it gets created environment around us just as much out of balance.
It also, there's another good part in Genesis that shows this, and that's when Adam and Eve fell. The entire creation was affected, not just those two people, right? If you read Genesis, it's very clear that the whole universe, essentially, was affected by that. So there is something there which is more than just a bunch of rocks and some chemical reactions. Yes, John?
Oh, I was wondering if you could possibly talk a little more about cow farts.
You can't tell that your dad is a middle school teacher. You just can't tell. Any additional questions for Lydia or comments? Jacob.
I know you don't like cows, but I really like cows. They're like my second favorite animal. Dogs. Yeah. So cows are, the reason I like cows is because their manure is really good for the soil, especially if you graze them.
So it just depends how you have them.
Yeah.
You can get rabbits.
There are ways to raise animals that are wrong, that are the cheap way to raise animals, which probably isn't that good for the environment. But then there's the proper way that animals can be raised, and it's actually, I think it's actually like good for the soil in a way.
Manure is great, and again, God created those creatures in order to have an interconnected system. But at a certain point, given the fact that the earth doesn't increase or decrease in size, we do have a certain amount of room to grow into. You can't have an unlimited amount of cows. You can't have an unlimited amount of people. I'm not a eugenist, but I think at a certain point you have to have some kind of one-child policy. You have to have, no more beef as a country, because we are not responsible, and it's power's responsibility to create laws that get listened to.
Can we go back to the monoculture thing? Because I think one thing Jacob's talking about, is the concept of monoculture. So if you got some cows and you got some other stuff using the land, and you're it's a lot different than if you take 1,000 cows and put them in one place.
Right.
And you have to try to deal with the manure and the methane and everything else. So
Absolutely.
I think that there's something that is very orthodox about having a heterogeneous kind of agriculture. It's very moderate kind of in its approach, as opposed to just thousands of cows all cohabitating.
I have a serious question.
We're waiting with bated breath.
This notion is actually, I'm thinking that you would help answer, Father. This notion that the earth is just ours to use and abuse, and not cherish and not steward rationally. What sin would that be mainly? The kind of carelessness and rapacious attitude.
Ooh, good word. I would say greed, probably. That seems to me that it's a question of greed, because if we can live a moderate life, fast sometimes from meat, sometimes eat meat, if we can live a moderate life, then the earth is probably going to be just fine. It's the extremes that really get us in a bad situation. Like putting 1,000 cows together or 10,000 pigs on the same farm or something like that. And people need to make money, and that's fine. But there has to be a sort of consciousness from an Orthodox point of view, which is greater than just like, how can I make another buck? I have to think about the next generation and the next generation after that. The Lord clearly put us in charge of the place, and we have to be able to answer to Him how we steward that gift that He gave us. You want to say
I
something,
was
Chief?
going to say, usury plays a big role in the modern
It does.
agricultural.
Absolutely. The huge loans that the farmers have to get every season almost.
Yeah.
And Lydia mentioned the concept of these genetically modified seeds that Monsanto and now Bayer, I think Bayer bought Monsanto, is using. And I think that's something we also need to really have some thinking about. Do we really want to make it so that a family can't take seeds from their harvest and plant it next year to grow more stuff? Because that's the way farming has always been. But it doesn't work that way anymore. You can't do that. You can't, it doesn't work that way. You have to go buy new seeds. You can't take seeds from the corn, save a few ears of corn, plant some more corn for next year. That, first of all, it doesn't work. Secondly, it's illegal, according to the contract that you signed with the manufacturer. So it has a lot of repercussions for our sort of way of life in the world and our way of farming. It's changed radically because of that. So we aren't farmers, most of us here in this room, so we don't think about that. But farmers are really suffering from this. Other questions, comments? Yeah.
I kind of wanted to touch base a little bit on control of population. I mean, this is something...
Really? I was trying to ignore that and hope that we weren't going to have that conversation. But I guess my hope is
But
dashed.
we just need to be clear that this, as a Christians, we are not exactly for it. It's not something we should control by abortions, by all of this. It can be controlled by chastity.
Yes.
So this is something that it's very hard to swallow for many people. They willing to have sexual relationship before they even get married, right? So that means they kind of lose that kind of ability to be chaste and to control population that way, right? So I mean, there is a way
Yes, of
God
course.
gives us
Of
to
course.
control the population.
Of course, absolutely. We are not big in our days on taking responsibility for our actions. If there's an easy way, we'll do the easy way rather than being responsible.
Right.
So that's just a microcosm of the sort of greater societal problem of, if I can get away with something and I don't have to take responsibility for it, I'm going to do that. I would argue that's not really the Orthodox way.
Yeah.
We should be responsible for our actions and not take actions until we're ready to be responsible.
Right, and that's one of the things that, young people willing to do in many things, but are they willing to give up computers or phones or their sexual life before marriage,
I think that those things are a little bit different, but nonetheless, it's a good conversation to have. I think it's really a conversation that the whole population has to have, maybe not just of our country, but the whole world. Because it's very hard to sort of say to somebody, you should have fewer children. Meanwhile, that guy over there is having 24 children, right? So, and I'm not exaggerating. So there has to be, I think, everybody has to do their part, okay? But it's not like we are overloading the earth with Orthodox Christians right now. So I don't think that there's going to be a big push by the church to say, hey, let's try to cut down on this excessive number of Orthodox Christians we have here. But on a micro level, what you're saying is absolutely right. People need to take responsibility for their actions, and in effect, that's kind of what Lydia's whole thing was about, as I understand it. Questions, comments?
What I really enjoyed is a lot of times we get overwhelmed by the big picture of it, and just give up. But you continually kept bringing it back to little things. And if you get millions of people all doing little things, it adds up. And then you do a little bit, you get some success, and you do a little more. So thank you very much for that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lydia. Great job.